Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hey, welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
I'm Brie.
And this is episode 73.
Yay!
And I had nothing to talk about.
That's amazing. Actually, it's just because you are exhausted.
I am really, really tired.
But you're in luck because I'm in Wheatland mode.
Yay!
So there is no stopping me.
We're all in luck. This is luck for everyone.
I was home this morning because I decided not to go to work at all this week.
Yay!
Except for a little bit tomorrow. And Zach is home because he also decided not to go to work this week. But he was on a sailing trip until yesterday. So this is his first morning he's been home in a few days. And I was like singing and dancing and moving stuff around. He's like, where is this version of my wife most of the time? It's like, well, this is Wheatland Brie.
Like,
so
she's normally sad.
She usually has to go to work. So
that makes her not happy.
She's
But how
miserable.
many days? Where is the counter at?
I leave tomorrow.
No, not for that.
Oh.
For the
Gosh.
thingy. It's less than 80 now, I know, because we were at 86 like not that long ago.
Absolutely. So I'll just look. 76.
Nice.
76 days until I'm done being a clerk.
By the time this airs,
I'll be
you'll
like a
have,
month
like,
out.
month. Yeah, it's gonna be incredible.
Yay! I'm gonna be Wheatland Brie all the time by then.
Yes.
Because I will be so
You're
excited.
going to be realtor Brie.
Yes.
All the time.
All the time. Instead of part-time or sometimes.
As much as you can muster it.
So I
I
have...
think I just snorted. Potentially into the microphone. Maybe I'm asleep as I sit here with my eyes open.
That's a cool new talent. You
Anyways,
should
my
market
apologies.
that. Here's my course on how to sleep while podcasting. Only $29.99.
I would be so wealthy. Or not.
It's probably a very
Niche
small market. People that want to sleep while podcasting.
Look. Hey, I haven't said that in so long.
Oh, it's like a callback.
Yay!
We could have like one of those dream sequence callback episodes. We're like, remember that time?
We'll just say catchphrases. It would take so long to go through our old episodes to figure out what our catchphrases were.
Right.
I had to come up with a description. I totally derailed what you were going to talk about.
That's fine.
I always do. That's what I'm here for. To sleep while we podcast and to derail you.
I'm starting to feel like I'm being sabotaged. Or punked.
Boys song.
Good job.
It's not a way of life. Now I don't remember what I was going to say. So continue with your story.
Now I've derailed you.
Exactly. Touché.
So I leave for Wheatland tomorrow.
Woohoo!
And my favorite part of Wheatland is the random things I feel like I have to buy to bring to Wheatland every year. This year includes, it's going to be cold. Like, it's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow, and it's a low of 42 degrees Saturday night.
Holy, that's cold.
Yeah. So I bought a heated vest.
Nice, yeah.
Like one of the you can get them on Amazon, and it's got a little battery packet.
My dad has that, and he swears by it.
I am stoked.
Yes.
I'm so excited to test out. Then I also had to, on top of that, throw in a wearable blanket,
Well, duh.
which looks like a
Snuggie?
fuzzy version of a Snuggie,
You're now my enemy.
but it has glow in the dark stars on it.
You and my mother. My mother ate at Applebee's today.
Oh, gross.
And you have a Snuggie. Although that is pretty cool.
I mean, it's more like an oversized hooded sweatshirt, really.
I'll admit I don't have as much hatred for Snuggies as I used to. I have much more appreciation for them now that I'm older and like to
Be warm.
and comfortable. Yeah.
And then I decided I didn't want to walk to do crafts this year at, like, they have like they call it middle ground. It's like a teenager craft area, but it's
Okay,
really
sure.
just a craft area. and they do things like face painting and henna and
nice. Yeah.
friendship bracelets and stuff. So I bought all the stuff to make friendship bracelets.
That's very Taylor Swift of you.
Yes, we're going to... I was going to say pixie dust because, you know, Disney.
That is a Disney
but we
thing,
could make
yeah.
bracelets and, like, leave them around Wheatland.
Oh,
which then
yeah.
made me think I dug up all of the, like, stickers and business cards and
Ooh, yeah.
a few of the leftover pots we had from Comic-Con. And I'm going to leave those around at Wheatland.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get some new listeners.
Love that. That's
And-
exactly where we need to drum up our listeners. You need to
Exactly.
pack your shirt and
Oh, yeah.
shirt.
My shirt, Connor's shirt, Zach's shirt, they're all packed already.
Ryan and Carly and I. Yes, that is all of us. We're planning. Did I mention I'm sleepy? Like sleepy. We are planning to wear ours to the airport to travel in.
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
that's the perfect place to wear them.
That's a
because
great idea.
It's an airport and there's people from everywhere, all over the place.
I'm going to do that when we go to Disney as well.
Yes.
And this weekend, it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be incredible. I'm so excited.
I also bought all the stuff to make glitter tattoos.
Absolutely.
Because why not?
I was actually going to mention that I have a bunch of tattoos, but if you're going to make them.
Yeah, we have glitter tattoos for Wheatland. It's going to be amazing.
So now I'm trying to think of a really good transition to my story. It is a very weird topic, however. Please forgive me. I am doing hopefully my very last dialing it in episode for a long time because I've been so busy. Our house is like on the cusp of done.
It looks so good, you guys.
My library, I have a wall that's bookshelves. We call it the library. And it's a library again. The shelves
It's got
are
little
up.
things and little decorative touches.
I mopped my floors.
Some Fraggle Rocks.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Ninja Turtles all over it.
Connor's going to be stoked.
He is going to be. Oh, I have something for him.
He was devastated he could not come with me today,
I know.
by the way.
Carly was too.
He was like, why can't I go with you? Because Carly's not even there. He's like, I could still come. Why would you?
Right. Because there's Ninja Turtles in the library now, Mom.
And now he'll know, and he'll be able to rub that in my
If
face.
he breaks them apart, they're Legos, so I'm sure he can actually fix them.
Oh,
so out of
probably.
everything, it's probably the best thing for him to play with in our house. Anyway, yes, so I dialed it in just a little bit. Bear with me. A lot of what I'm about to tell you kind of comes from Reddit. It's not really what I'm going to tell you. It's what I'm going to read to you. But let me pose this question for you. Have you ever had something super weird happen that's either like way coincidental or gives you that deja-vu feeling, or you like think that you've snipped open a package of marshmallows and then when you go back for that package of marshmallows, it's not open. It's closed.
All the time.
So a lot of people call those glitch in the matrix. And that is what I'm going to talk about. It's
amazing.
A super weird phenomena. It's called glitch in the matrix, and a lot of people use that in a very broad way. I did not know this, but there are actually a huge group of people, there's even a movie about it, that believe we are living in a simulation, that nothing we're doing is real, and that we're all like literally like the movie The Matrix, plugged into some computers and laying in a warehouse.
The movie is called The Matrix.
Exactly, yeah. And that's completely wild to me. I wanted to read this. This came from a much more legit website than Reddit. Sorry, Reddit. But I can't remember which one. I'll try to, like, annotate that in our notes or something.
.com.
Yes.
.gov, sorry.
Obviously.
It's got to be legit.
.edu. So glitch in the matrix also kind of comes down to like the matrix theory. And literally what this says is matrix theory is based on the idea that the world is like a computer program with a set of rules and algorithms that determine how things work. According to as per research, I feel like there might be a thing there. Anyway. Or maybe I'm just stupid. Understanding these rules and algorithms is key to success in life, and anyone can learn to hack the matrix by mastering them.
Oh, I didn't know this was a thing.
Yes. So there is glitch in the matrix.
I thought this was just like stories of like, I was wearing a yellow shirt and blue pants, and my friend was wearing yellow shirt and blue pants, and we were walking down the road. But no, like, people believe kind of like manifestation that you can find that. Oh, I'm excited now.
So it's going to devolve very quickly into stories about glitches in the Matrix. But I wanted to share some of the, I'm not going to say science behind this, but some of the belief, the theory behind this. So you have those who think we are literally laying in a warehouse with plugs and wires in our brains, and we're all doing this for fake. There are these people who believe, I feel like this one, the one I just read, is like a step down from that, and it's more that they believe the world is similar to a computer hack kind of thing. I did get into some stuff. I was gonna say crap. That's not fair. Getting into some stuff that my brain could not take right now. That was like atoms and holes in the universe, and like it was wild. It was comprehensible, but it was much deeper than I wanted to get into this. So if you ever feel like expanding on this, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people do also believe that glitches in the Matrix are time slips.
Okay.
And that somehow you've opened that bag of marshmallows, I'm just going to keep on with that example, in the future, and you haven't done it yet, but you slipped back in time somehow. You missed it. Some people believe it's a alternate reality. So you're coexisting with that reality, and somehow Bree in that reality didn't open those marshmallows, and that reality marshmallows came to you. I don't know if that affects the flavor or not. It's all very interesting and kind of creepy, which is why I just went with it. I do have my own personal theory in that it's honestly, truly just us and our brains doing weird stuff. I really take the magic out of it, and just, I feel like...
You're awful.
I know. Like, I read one the other day that a woman lost a ring, and she couldn't find it anywhere. They looked everywhere, and then they went to a friend's house, and it was sitting on her rug, right in the middle of the rug. Well, in my opinion, it probably fell into, like, their shoe, or an earring will get stuck in, like, my hair sometimes, and I won't find it until a day later when I'm, like, brushing out my hair, or it falls out of my hair or something. That's my theory. It takes all the fun out of it, so we're not going to expand on that. I'm just going to go into some stories.
Yay! We're believers.
I do like all the fun, scary stuff.
Don't let Jessica fool you. We're believers.
So, I want to give you kind of the broad glitch in the Matrix ideas. Like, what some of these stories might be about, what people consider glitches in the Matrix, objects vanishing and reappearing, like I just said. People being seen by different witnesses in different locations, but at the exact same time. So I waved to my neighbor. He waved back at 4:04 on a Wednesday. But my wife, I don't know why it's my wife, is at the grocery store and has a conversation with our neighbor at 4:04 on a Wednesday. Pew, pew, pew. Gunshots. Changes in everyday familiar objects, like a door changing color, or a sign having a little picture on it that it didn't have before. Just super creepy, insane things. And kind of in the theory, like deja-vu sort of stuff, like that kind of goes along with it. I guess it's a very broad category. So anyway, as I said, these are from Reddit. These are from Quora. Please excuse me if you're listening and I somehow end up reading your story.
That means you're famous. You're on a podcast.
Exactly. And thank you so much for the stuff, because I'm tired.
Because we needed it.
Exactly. These are older ones. I did kind of go back because I was kind of shocked that they were as early as like 2012. People were posting Glitch in the Matrix stories, which I thought, I just kind of experienced this the first time in the last few years, seeing stories and stuff.
Right.
So, I think I experienced a glitch today. I brought the earrings I broke to my bedroom. The latch completely came off, and I was ticked because it was my favorite earrings. I have them in gold and silver, and the gold broke. So a few days later, I go to look at them to throw them out because they broke, and I was going to buy another pair. And all the latches on both the gold and the silver were completely perfect. None were broken. So, I don't want to debunk any of them. Like, my brain immediately starts trying to debunk them.
You're like, yeah, right.
Exactly.
They were never broken.
You were wrong. Or they looked broken and then they weren't. Anyway.
You were wrong.
All right. This happened about 15 years ago. I called up a friend and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. Remember when answering machines were?
Yes.
Hey, it's me. Sorry I missed you. I'll call you later. Bye. And then I hung up and I left the house. I made no other calls that day. Later that day, he called me back and he says, wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to? She's like, give me shivers.
Right?
I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't talking to a girl. As it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I had to go over to his house because I needed to listen to this message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave as quoted above, there was a slight pause, and then it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I didn't recognize.
Oh my goodness.
You could compare it to the message I had left earlier, and my voice was indistinguishable from...
That one is crazy.
It's insane.
That would freak me out.
And the conversation was about going skiing and talking about he was going to go skiing, but he had to go to the shop and work on his car first, which correlated to exactly what he was doing. And then the message stopped. It was on a digital answering machine, so he couldn't take a tape and try to analyze it or anything. But that's a very casual conversation. That's not something you might call like your doctor's office and converse with the lady that answers the phone or something.
Right.
So, he did mention that his friend did not have a party line, and neither did he. Which I feel like by the time we had digital mailbox or voicemails
we weren't dealing with party lines
I
anymore
can't imagine,
anyway.
Unless it was another country with something
right.
weird. But yeah, that one really.
Whoa.
That one makes me think time slip could actually be a thing.
Right.
Or alternate
universe or something.
This one is, I don't know if it's creepy, it's kind of endearing. When I was around 20, a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason, her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or to find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up and I dismissed it. I just figured my brain was a scumbag. Fast forward, right? Fast forward a few years, Halloween 2009, I'm in the car with a friend and we stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge onto the highway when I get a phone call from a random number. So I stopped the car, but no one answered. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Which, I mean, you stopped in the middle of a thing to answer a phone call, but...
Right.
But, I guess it's not part of the story. The second they get on the highway, some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Both drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't have gotten that phone call. I called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. It rang 3 times and went to a voicemail. Hi, you've reached Aurora. Please leave your name and number. I've never had goosebumps like that before in my life. I called it again the next day because I was confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers and we get to talking. I tell her my entire story, including the dreams I had, and she tells me she doesn't know how I got her number and she has never called me as far as she remembered. Weird. I ask her if she has a Facebook to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. I check Facebook and holy F, to quote him, it's her. If that's not a glitch in the Matrix, then I am just bat-crap crazy.
That is insane.
How does that happen?
Oh my goodness.
I love that one. One time, I dropped an apple in the middle of an empty floor. No tables nearby that it could have rolled under, and it just vanished. Completely disappeared. No trace left behind. I didn't even hear it hit the floor. I suspect maybe I'm just an idiot and couldn't see where it went, but I looked all over that room and I could not find it to save my life. Someone below that commented and said, this happened to me once, but with an Adderall, and I still think about it. Someone said it's happened with filters for my earphones many times. Oh gosh, this one's creepy. I went to bed in my bed and woke up in my then girlfriend's bed. I was woken up by her in shock at me being there. I didn't have a key, no windows were open, she lived several miles from my house, and no drugs or alcohol were involved. What?
No.
No.
That's not possible.
Exactly.
Can you...
This one I have heard a few times, so I think it's just wild. I was crossing a road in my crappy older car when a big truck came barreling down on me from across the street. Or from the cross street, sorry. My brain tried to fix that. I knew I couldn't make it across, and that truck didn't have the space to slow down or even swerve. I closed my eyes and gave up to it. When I opened them, I was on the other side of the intersection, and the truck was going at the same speed a block past me. I've driven hundreds of thousands of miles since then, with plenty of entirely explainable near misses, but I still have no idea how this happened.
Oh my goodness. That's like, now you've got like Final Destination after you.
Yeah, what is happening? There's someone who responded to that said, my dad has mostly the same story, except it was going under a bridge, and it should have been a head-on collision. Neither him or his friend who was in the car with him know how they didn't crash, as they both ended up closing their eyes.
Oh my goodness.
I think it's even crazier when there's someone
multiple.
With them.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I was at a friend's house. I was 10. We went upstairs and down the hall into his room, but when we went through the door in his room, we actually went through a door and into the kitchen. We stood for a second looking at each other and wondering, WTF. His mother just asked if we forgot something, because to her, it looked like we ran up the stairs, turned around, and ran back. We went properly to his room, but just asked each other if that just really happened.
Oh my goodness. When there's more than one person involved.
Yes. How? Wait. This one's kind of terrifying. I was walking down the street and saw a man helping his wife and kid into a minivan. He turned around and we locked eyes. I smiled and gave a casual point, like, hey buddy, because I thought it was amusing. He was a spitting image, height, build, haircut, everything except for our clothes. I took a step forward as I thought I'd at least say hi. He was wide-eyed and looked frightened, though he didn't look frightened though, and he raised his hand, mouthed, don't. I stopped and was confused as he looked over his shoulder to make sure his wife was in the car, but to me it almost looked like he wanted to make sure she didn't see. Then he got in the van and drove off, but he drove past me, staring at me like he was scared or concerned. I wasn't disheveled, I didn't look scary. I was amused by it, but he was having none of it. That would terrify me.
That is obviously a time traveler that screwed up his timeline and was like, oh my god, this guy's gonna catch me right now.
Crap.
Like time traveler's wife style, he fell in love with somebody in the wrong timeline and he stayed and now he's about to get caught.
There's a comment below it that I think is very creepy that says, many urban legends about doppelgangers involve the duplicate wanting and trying to kill the original to replace them. My man's was running for his life. About 20 years ago, I was making ramen on the stove. I had water heating up in a pot and on the front left burner. I had pulled a packet of ramen out, opened one end and removed the seasoning packet. I was standing over waiting for the water to boil, which is literally the longest thing in life when you're trying to wait for it. When the water finally boiled, the noodle packet was gone. The seasoning packet was there, but no noodles. I checked the cabinets, the trash, everywhere. Vanished. Finally, I had to pull out a new packet of noodles. I hadn't left the stove, and nobody had been around. A few days later, I was cleaning up the kitchen, lifted the hood-style stovetop, and there were the noodles sitting under the burner. They were still in the packet and open on one end, with the seasoning packet gone. I couldn't have gotten them in there while I was cooking because the burner was on and there was a pot full of hot water sitting on it. I'm not even sure that it could have been lifted without removing the burners, which were all connected at the time that I was making the noodles. What? Someone did say mice. Like, mice. But I can't imagine a mouse being so bold that it was in there while it was burning. Because
right.
That seems like it would heat up the whole stove contraption.
Yeah. Which
would be very uncomfortable. It makes me think of like the frog boiling in the pot.
Right.
But yeah, so that's Glitch in the Matrix. I do my brain automatically wants to, like, reason them away.
Right.
But I also find them really creepy, and some of them are very difficult to reason away. Why would that guy act so shady?
Right.
That's so weird.
And when they're, like, the two kids that walked through the door and they're, like, in the wrong spot. How do you... I don't know.
I've been trying to think of my own personal glitch in the Matrix situations, and I know that I've had them before. Like, I know that I set this here. Why is it there now? Mm-hmm. Or I know I opened this. Why is it closed? But I can't think of any. They must not have really left an impression. I probably reasoned them away.
Right. The first one I could think of, or the only one I can think of, because again, I know I have my own too.
Yeah.
My mom wears my grandpa's wedding ring on her thumb.
Okay, yep.
And she has since he passed away, or since my grandma passed away in 2017. And she was still working at Walmart. So this would have been right around COVID time, maybe just before COVID or just after.
Okay.
And she was at work and she lost the ring.
That'd be devastating.
Said she remembered having it when she got there, and then she looked down and it was gone. And she's at work, and it's Walmart, so it could be anywhere at this point.
Right.
And she was a cashier, so it could have like slipped and fallen into anybody's bag. She checked everywhere. It happened in the morning. We talked about it all day. She was devastated. She checked all around her. She checked her pockets. She checked her apron. She checked her vest. She checked her purse. All day at work. She remembers having it on at work, leaves work that night, goes home, changes out of her clothes, gets up the next morning, goes to get dressed, puts her jeans back on, and reaches in her pocket, and it's in like that tiny little pocket in jeans, which she had checked. Yes, which she had checked because sometimes she would store it there.
Sure.
But she I went through it, like, have you checked all your pockets? Are you sure you checked them? Like, she went through it with everybody. She checked all these places. It could have been anywhere at work, and it's in this pocket.
So yes, glitch in the Matrix. I don't know how you feel about it. I do not believe we are living in a simulation. I think that there are some reasonable explanations for most things. But especially because, like, your brain knows a lot more than you put on. Like, there's a really great book, The Gift of Fear. Mm-hmm. Wonderful book. I haven't made it through the whole thing, actually, but what I have read in it so far has been incredible. It tells you about all of those subconscious things that you're always taking in that warn you. You know that guy that's walking towards you? He has displayed some behaviors that your brain notices are bad. Mm-hmm. We're very
intuitive.
Yes, without realizing it. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of reasonable explanations, but I also think they're fun. So
absolutely. I love that. Interesting that you kind of went with a topic that I feel like is something I would normally cover.
Sure.
Because my topic is 100% something you would normally cover.
Ooh.
So I'm not even gonna, that is my transition. That's all I got.
Absolutely, hey.
So I stumbled upon some back and forth information about Countess Elizabeth Bathory. And there are different ways to pronounce her names. That is the whitest Englishiest version I can manage. And I even had to reach out to Jessica and make sure she hadn't covered this topic because it seemed like something she would cover. And it is actually pretty well known and widely covered even, and That's Why We Drink has done an episode about Elizabeth Bathory.
I thought that the name seemed super familiar, and I bet, as soon as you said that and I read the name, I'm like, I haven't done that, but I bet I've heard her on That's Why We Drink.
Yes.
So, did you listen to the episode?
I did not, because there wasn't time.
I
did not expect this to turn into such a giant topic. So it will be a two-parter, which means maybe I will have time to listen to And That's Why We Drink, because we do have a little break in our podcast schedule coming up.
Not for you guys.
Not for you guys, just for us.
You won't even notice.
And that's how we like it.
And that's why we drink. Wait.
I mean that too. So, sorry, I was looking up something else and lost where I was.
I get it.
So there's a bunch of different podcasts, websites. There are researchers that do their thesis on this woman. There is a 197 page, like, scholarly researched thesis dissertation that I obviously also did not have time to read. There are numerous books that are about not just the mythical part of Countess Elizabeth, but just some of the conspiracies and the drama that lives around her. So this was supposed to be a quick 20-minute topic about this chick, and it's going to turn into at least 2 episodes, and I bought a whole book to read and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of mystery, controversy surrounding Elizabeth Bathory, and nothing that I'm going to talk about is anything like this. None of this is my own thoughts. This is not a hot take that I came up with. This is just stuff that I'm getting off Reddit and different websites, Wikipedia even. And when I come back for the next episode, hopefully stuff that I read out of this book that I bought.
And That's Why We Drink.
And in the podcast episode for And That's Why We Drink. If you want to learn more about this Elizabeth Bathory, obviously I'll be able to tell you more next week. But I'm going to start with The Blood Countess by Anuka Bailey. There is also a book called Infamous Lady, The True Story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory by Kimberly Craft. And that one specifically, The Infamous Lady, a lot of what I talk about today comes from that book. It seems to be one of the more well-researched one that actually goes back to Elizabeth's personal belongings. I will let you know next week if I find even more good research. So I'm going to start with just kind of talking about her and her life and an overview of what happened. And then next week I'll get more into the conspiracies and what is found to be true and what's not, or, well, you'll understand why. So, Elizabeth Bathory was allegedly a serial killer who may have murdered and tortured up to 650 different young women. This happened back in the late 1500s, early 1600s. She has become the inspiration for many of the lady vampire stories. There's a book and some movies where she is portrayed as Countess Dracula or the Blood Countess. There are many books and movies. There's even half a dozen metal songs written about her from different metal bands. And I believe Castlevania, the video game,
Ryan could tell you,
I believe is based on this woman. Yes, she is also a main character in the Castlevania video games. There are lots of different theories around her, some conspiracies, and some kind of just scary stories, I guess, basically around her.
She sounds fascinating already.
Right?
Oh, no.
She was a Hungarian noblewoman. She's from a very wealthy and prestigious family, born in 1560 to a baron and baroness in a family that had lots of wealthy people with fancy titles. She was the niece of a prince of Transylvania. So royal family, they held a lot of power. Some sources say as a child she may have suffered from migraines and epilepsy, which would have been very scary back then. I believe they called epilepsy the falling sickness. They didn't know a lot about it. But just as a side note, as we start to talk more about her, I'm sure this is totally unrelated to the rumors about this woman, but a treatment for epilepsy used to be to feed them blood of somebody that didn't have epilepsy. Just a little note there.
Don't allow that.
I'm going to cut that out. But otherwise, one article kind of explained this woman as a modern-day Princess Diana. She was very well known, had a very prestigious family, a lot of wealth, a lot of money, a lot of power. There were lots of different palaces and properties that they could travel to. They traveled with other highfalutin rich people. She was very smart, very educated, and very well read. She spoke at least 4 different languages, including Latin, German, Hungarian, and Greek. And there are rumors that she may have had an illegitimate child around the age of 13 with a peasant boy. But the source of that is a book called Royal Pains, a rogues gallery of brats, brutes, and bad seeds. So take that as you will. I didn't really see any other, good research about that part of it. She lived in a great big palace with her family until she was sent to live with her betrothed. She had an arranged marriage at 11.
Oh.
So she was shipped off to live in his palace when she was 11. He was only 5 years older than her, so not like the grossest arranged marriage we've ever heard of. And I guess in that area, in those circles, it was pretty common to betroth your children and then send them off to essentially be raised by the family they were going to marry into.
Probably to be trained by them.
Basically. And so even though they sent her over there when she was 11, they didn't get married until she was 14 and he was 19. So at least he was an adult when they got married. His name was Count Ferenc Nadazd, or I also saw it as Francis Nadazdi, who also obviously came from a very well-off noble family. He was explained as the most eligible bachelor at the time because, again, she's coming from royalty, essentially. This all takes place back then it would have been Hungary, kind of right on the border of Hungary, Transylvania, in what would be now known as modern-day Slovakia. So she spends a few years there. They get married when she's 14 and they're 19. Apparently they had a very lavish wedding with about 4,500 guests in attendance. Oh, I thought this was interesting. And again, this is from Wikipedia and the source was kind of interesting. But apparently it was custom in those days. He actually took her last name when they got married because she came from the more prominent family.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Which I thought was crazy. And then he basically immediately joined the military and was off to fight in wars and gain a bunch of military accolades and become very important in the Turkey-Hungarian War. I guess he killed a bunch of Turks. He was renowned in the area. There's still statues dedicated to this man.
Wow.
Because he so quickly ran off into the military, they actually did not have babies until they had been married for 10 years. So she was 24 when she had babies, which I thought was wonderful. Good for her. She didn't have to have babies right at 14 years old. They had 5 kids in total, but only 3 made it to adulthood. Part of her husband's dowry gift to her when they married was a full estate that his mother had given him. And this estate included not only a castle, but also a country home and 17 small villages.
Wow.
Yeah, just a small dowry gift. No big deal.
Ryan really needs to step it up.
Right? Nobody left me any villages. As his wife, she would usually go stay in this other palace in the royal city that they lived in, but she also had this castle that she could escape to whenever she wanted to. Basically just portraying that she had a lot of different estates and places that she traveled to or could stay. She had a lot of choices where she wanted to be. These people had a ridiculous amount of money and
villages.
Yeah. Eventually her husband does die before her. He dies in 1604, which puts him about 49 years old, and so she's a little bit younger than that. He dies of a very mysterious illness. He dies right in the middle of a battle, and the only notes I found is that there were some signs that maybe his legs started being affected 2 years prior, so maybe something like MS or ALS or something, or could have even been seizures that took away part of his functionality. And once he passes away, she basically moves full-time back to that castle that he had given her when they married. It does not talk a lot about their marriage and whether it was a good one or a bad one. Some of the letters between the two of them, it doesn't sound like they were overly in love, but they weren't. It wasn't cold. It wasn't like they hated each other. When they spoke about the children, it was very warm. And endearing, it was explained. So we don't know if it was a happy marriage, but it didn't seem to be a bad marriage.
Okay.
at this point, I don't have a lot more about her life at that point. I don't know what she was doing or what she was into, if she was like a typical noblewoman. They kind of gloss over everything to get to the serial killer stuff.
Sure.
So I'm hoping with the further research I do when I come back and do the next episode, hopefully I'll have more about like that time in her life. And because then, so the husband dies in 1604, and in 1610, Elizabeth and her servants start being investigated for murder. Some of the crazier stories say that there were over 650 victims, and eventually the stories even start to grow to allege that she was murdering young women so that she could bathe in their blood as a fountain of youth type story, which is where the Lady Dracula stories come from, or the Countess Dracula. But I will give this away early on. Everything I read about the bathing in blood stories has already been debunked. Most of those stories didn't even start to be rumored until like 100 years after she died. So there's no, not even a glimmer that is probably true. It's just how the stories were rumored and then grew into basically what we have with our vampire stories nowadays.
They always do that to the cool women.
Right?
Well, I mean, she might not be cool. She might literally be a murderer. But...
So, allegedly, this woman and her servants had been murdering peasants for years, but no one cared because it wasn't illegal to kill peasants at the time. But after she opened a finishing school in her property, she escalated to murdering young women from noble families, and that's when people started to take notice, and the king ordered an investigation. So yes, as a side note, she at some point opened a finishing school for young women, and noble families would just send their girls to her to be educated. Again, that's something else that's kind of glossed over in the story. It's just like, oh yeah, and then she had this finishing school and she murdered people. So I'm also hoping to learn more about that, because it's just like, I don't know, she got married and lived in all these places, and then her husband died and she had a finishing school and people died. The King of Hungary, again, starts to hear these crazy rumors that she's been straight up murdering women and girls for years. He demands the investigation. His Palatine supposedly talks to 279 witnesses that can corroborate that this woman has been murdering people for years, but a lot of them are kind of like hearsay. Yeah, I heard from my sister has a friend that works in the castle and she saw this. Or, yeah, I saw this really weird thing, or my friend told me they saw. So there's a lot of hearsay, but there are some eyewitness stories of tortured bodies, hundreds of coffins leaving the property. There's one witness who says she heard from someone else that person saw the Countess's own records that she had murdered 650 victims, but that statement is never corroborated even by the guy that supposedly saw these records. When he testifies in the court case, he doesn't even mention that. So that is the only statement that it could have been up to 650 women. The castellan of her home palace, so this is like the manager of the estate, basically.
Okay.
Not like the family's palace, but this woman's home palace, said that it testified that it was more like 175 victims, and another castellan at another palace said it might have been more like 200 to 300. And these stories all took place at all of her aforementioned properties. Again, I mentioned that she traveled a lot. She had all these different places she could go, and there were comments and notations that basically wherever she was staying, girls would end up missing. So the timeline says that the king visited her castle on Christmas Eve in 1610, and then 4 days later, on December 29th, Elizabeth and her 4 servants / accomplices, I said accomplishments, accomplices were arrested on December 29th. So her adult children or their spouses were also present when she was arrested, which suggests that the Palatine was in contact with her children and warned them that he was going to be arresting her. One story also says that when the Palatine showed up to arrest her, he found her, like, in the middle of actually torturing a victim. It doesn't mention how that plays into the fact that her family is there for this, so I'm hoping to get more on that as I read more as well. I think that's one of those extrapolated stories. The 4 accomplices, the 4 servants, are arrested, and they are immediately questioned, and within 9 days, those 4 accomplices are found guilty and put to death. Ugh. The testimony from these 4 servants is pretty damning. These were her 4 main servants, and this included John Fixco. I'm not going to even try their last names. Basically, it includes John, Helena, Dorothy, and Kate. John is a disfigured young man that works for her, and the other 3 are like older ladies. One of them is her children's wet nurse, and then one is just like an older lady friend from town and her friend's friend that all work for her. There is also mention of a previous servant named Anna who died prior to Elizabeth being arrested. But all of the sources and all of the testimony by these servants basically say that Anna was kind of the ringleader, and she was in charge of all the torture. The 4 servants testify that there were between 30 and 50 young women murdered, and all 4 reported some kind of consistent techniques and instances, and it seemed to be unrehearsed. So this is considered the most damning testimony of all of the evidence because it was her 4 closest accomplices. They were interviewed separately, but they told some of the same stories and had some of the same experiences. But like I'll talk more next week, it is also believed that they were tortured to get that information.
Oh.
So even though it is very damning testimony and it does seem like it can corroborate that some of this stuff happened, it's a little worrisome on whether or not you can believe that testimony because it was given under duress. So of the 4 of them, 3 of them were immediately sentenced to death, but the 4th one, Kate, was actually given a lighter sentence because she was considered to be an unwilling participant, and her testimony was more that she was there and she witnessed it, or she was forced to endure it, but she wasn't like a ringleader for it. Elizabeth herself was never tried for the murders, but she was locked in her castle for the last 4 years of her life. Some accounts made it sound like she was like walled up in her room and forced to starve to death, but it really sounded more like it was like house arrest. One source reported that it was likely that her kids or her son-in-laws were able to get her special treatment because of the status of the family, and that might be why they were there when she was arrested. Maybe the Palatine had called them up and arranged, hey, we're going to arrest your mom, but because you guys are so prestigious and wealthy and well-known, we're going to do it under the radar, and we'll give you this deal, and we're just going to put her on house arrest, because if they had, like, formally convicted her, she likely would have been stripped of all of her titles and her land and her, all of her belongings seized, and it would have then passed down through the children. The shame of the family, and kind of what you see during like Bridgerton, but whole different countries, probably a lot more angrier than it was in Bridgerton.
Yeah.
And then, but there was also a notation in some of the research by the craft lady whose name I keep wanting to call her Inhuman Lady, but that was not the name of her book. Infamous Lady. There was some of the research in Infamous Lady. There was a notation by the jury that basically said by finding the 4 accomplices guilty, they essentially found Elizabeth guilty. But again, there was never a separate trial or anything along those lines, which, like, I'll talk more next week about how that plays into the conspiracy theories of it, and if she was never formally charged, did they really have the evidence? But there was a small notation that gets talked about in the Infamous Lady book that kind of covers that. So, yeah, she technically was never charged. She lived out her last 4 years locked in this castle, essentially, like stonemasons came and walled off the door so she couldn't leave. It doesn't say necessarily what she died of, so I don't know if eventually it was starvation or something along those lines, or if it was natural causes. But it's interesting. What I'll talk more about next week is there's lots of different conspiracy theories on, number one, if she even was a murderer, because that is a lot of murders to have happened. There is some theory that she was not well liked by the current people in power, the King of Hungary, and that maybe this was a ploy to get her discredited for other reasons, and so they created this awful tale of murdered young women. And it's crazy.
I'm very invested in hearing the rest of this, because it's sort of wild. I do remember this, and that's why we drink girls go a bit, well, no, let me rephrase that. Christine goes over more of this and kind of covers the victims and some of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a very graphic source that I found that actually, it's again from the infamous Lady book, that gives some of the servants' testimony and the actual, what they would do to some of these women and the actual torture that they used, and I didn't want to read it again, so I'm not going to tell you guys.
You all get to wonder. Or go find it yourself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm very excited to hear the rest of this.
And we have such a big break between now and when we record again. I'm going to be an expert. I'm going to be able to read all of these things, listen to all these episodes. It's going to be great.
It's kind of wild how many of our stories end up shocking us.
Right?
All right. This has been a yawn. This has been Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit.
You can reach out to us on any of those social medias, as well as at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
And Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
My pigeon is getting fabulous.
It is. You should record a perfect one and then just make Ryan put it in every time.
I should. But then we would not have these moments.
That's true.
All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.